There is a moment that arrives quietly, often without warning. You reach for something on a high shelf, and your arm feels just slightly weaker than it did a year ago. You walk up a flight of stairs, and at the top you pause for just a moment longer than you used to. You look in the mirror and wonder when the reflection became someone you're still getting to know. These moments are easy to dismiss as simply aging, as the inevitable turning of the clock that everyone must accept. But here is what most people never realize. The body does not decline simply because time passes. It declines because of conversations it stops having, signals it stops receiving, materials it stops being given. The difference between someone who ages with vitality and someone who ages with limitation is not written in their genes alone. It is written in the daily, almost invisible choices that either call forth strength or allow it to quietly slip away. The medical community rarely connects these dots for us. They treat symptoms, they manage conditions, but they seldom sit us down and explain the underlying architecture of how the body actually works. And so we stumble through the later years guessing, hoping, often making the very mistakes that accelerate the very thing we fear most. What you are about to understand is not another diet, not another exercise trend, not a promise of reversal that cannot be kept. It is something far more valuable. A clear-eyed look at the levers you actually control, and how small shifts in understanding can change the entire trajectory of the years ahead. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. A calm exploration of metabolism, movement, and meaning in the later years. There comes a moment, often quietly and without fanfare, when the body begins to speak in a different language. Perhaps it arrives as a subtle awareness that recovery takes a little longer than it once did. Maybe it reveals itself in the morning stiffness that wasn't there a decade ago, or in the simple observation that the number on the scale seems to have settled into a new, higher resting place without any obvious change in habits. For many, this moment arrives with a question: what is actually happening inside? And what, if anything, can be done about it that doesn't require heroic measures or drastic sacrifice? This is not a question of vanity, though appearance may play a part. It is a question of substance. How do we want to inhabit our bodies in the decades ahead? What kind of old age are we building? Day by day, with the choices we make. These are not small questions, and they deserve answers that are thoughtful, grounded, and free from the noise of passing trends. The conversation around health in later life has become strangely cluttered. Conflicting headlines compete for attention. Promises of reversal and renewal echo through every medium. The noise can make it difficult to hear something simpler and more enduring: the quiet, consistent voice of how the body actually works. This exploration is an attempt to tune into that voice. It draws on decades of observation, both scientific and human, to construct not a rigid prescription but a flexible framework, a way of thinking about the aging body that is both compassionate and clear-eyed. What follows is not a list of rules to be followed perfectly, nor a collection of fears designed to motivate through anxiety. It is, instead, an invitation to understand the remarkable systems that keep us moving, thinking, and thriving. And from that understanding, to make choices that feel less like deprivation and more like wisdom. Part 1. The deceptively simple question of energy. Let us begin with something so fundamental we rarely give it a second thought: the food we eat and the energy it provides. The phrase calories in, calories out has been repeated so often and dismissed so frequently that it has lost much of its meaning. Yet beneath this simple formulation lies a world of beautiful complexity, and understanding that complexity is the first step toward making peace with your body. A calorie is, at its most basic level, a unit of measurement. It tells us how much potential energy is stored within a particular food. When you eat an apple or a piece of fish, You are consuming energy that has been captured from the sun, transformed by plants, and passed along through the great chain of life. Your body's primary task, from the moment food enters your mouth until its remnants leave your body, is to extract that energy and convert it into a form it can use. This usable energy is called adenosine triphosphate, though we rarely need to remember that name. What matters is the process. The first layer of complexity arises from the simple fact that not all calories are created equal in the eyes of your digestive system. The number printed on a food label is, at best, an approximation. Regulatory agencies in most countries allow a margin of error that can reach 20%. A food labeled as 100 calories could reasonably contain anywhere from 80 to 120. This is not a conspiracy or a sign of negligence. It is simply a reflection of the natural variation in whole foods and the limitations of our measurement systems. More important than this margin of error is the distinction between the energy a food contains and the energy your body can actually extract. This difference is known as metabolizable energy, and it varies dramatically depending on what you eat. Consider, for a moment, the humble stalk of broccoli. It contains carbohydrates. Yes, but many of those carbohydrates are bound up in structures called plant cell walls. These walls are made largely of fiber, and fiber is, from a human digestive perspective, remarkably resistant. The enzymes in your digestive tract simply do not have the tools to break it down completely. As a result, a significant portion of the energy in that broccoli passes through you entirely untouched, contributing to bulk and regularity, but not to your energy balance. This is the first great nuance in the energy equation. The energy you consume is not always the energy you keep. Two foods with identical calorie counts can have vastly different effects on your body depending on how much of their energy is actually available for absorption. A piece of processed white bread, with its finely ground flour and minimal fiber, will deliver nearly all of its caloric content to your system. A bowl of beans, with its complex carbohydrates and abundant fiber, will surrender less of its energy, and will do so more slowly, over a longer period. The second great nuance lies on the other side of the equation, the energy your body expends. This is not a single number, but a sum of several parts, each with its own character and each responsive to different influences. The largest portion, accounting for somewhere between half and two-thirds of your daily energy use, is your resting metabolic rate. This is the energy required simply to keep you alive. Your heart beats. Your lungs expand and contract. Your brain processes the endless stream of information from your senses. Your cells repair themselves and maintain their internal order. All of this work requires fuel, and the amount of fuel required is influenced by many factors, most notably the amount of lean tissue you carry. Muscle is metabolically active. It demands energy even when you are sitting still, reading these words. This is one of the reasons why preserving muscle mass becomes so important as the years pass. The second component is the energy cost of digestion itself. It takes work to break down food, to absorb its components, and to process those components once they enter your bloodstream. This is known as the thermic effect of food, and it varies significantly depending on what you have eaten. Fats are relatively easy for your body to handle. For every 100 calories of fat you consume, your body expends perhaps 2 or 3 calories in processing them, leaving you with a net gain of 97 or 98. Carbohydrates require a little more work, with a thermic effect of 5 to 10%. Protein, however, stands apart. Processing protein requires a significant investment of energy, somewhere between 20 and 30% of the calories it contains. For every 100 calories of protein you eat, your body burns 20 to 30 calories just to deal with it. The third component is physical activity, and this is where things become both more variable and more interesting. Physical activity is usually divided into two distinct categories. The first is exercise activity thermogenesis, a formal name for the deliberate movement we call exercise. The second is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, a term that encompasses everything else. Fidgeting in your chair, maintaining your posture while standing, walking to the mailbox, gesturing while you talk on the phone, even the small movements you make while cooking or cleaning. This second category, often shortened to the acronym NEAT, is both powerful and easily overlooked. Studies have observed that when people are intentionally overfed in research settings, those who are naturally resistant to weight gain often experience a spontaneous increase in their unconscious movement. They do not decide to move more. They simply find themselves fidgeting, shifting, and pottering about without any conscious intention. Conversely, when people lose weight, their NEAT often decreases, sometimes by hundreds of calories per day, without them ever noticing that they have become more sedentary. This quiet reduction in unconscious movement is now thought to be a more significant contributor to weight loss plateaus than the much-discussed slowing of the metabolic rate. What does all of this mean for someone simply trying to navigate the middle years and beyond with grace and health? It means that the simple equation is real, but the variables are many and they interact in complex ways. The practical response to this complexity is not to throw up one's hands in despair, but to adopt methods of tracking and observation that work with the body's variability rather than against it. Daily weighing, for example, is often discouraged because of the natural fluctuations that occur from one day to the next. Water retention, the volume of food in the digestive tract, and even the time of day can shift the number on the scale by several pounds. But when these daily numbers are averaged over a week, they provide a clear and reliable signal. A weekly average smooths out the noise and reveals the underlying trend. This is not about obsession with a single number. It is about gathering information in a consistent way so that you can make informed adjustments. Similarly, tracking food intake is less about achieving perfect accuracy than about establishing a consistent baseline. The errors on food labels may be present, but they tend to be consistent in their direction. By tracking what you eat in a systematic way, you create a reliable feedback loop. You learn, over time, how different foods and different quantities affect your weight, your energy, and your sense of well-being. This is not laboratory science. It is the practical art of self-knowledge. Part 2. The central importance of protein and the preservation of strength. If there is one nutrient that deserves special attention in the later decades of life, it is protein, not because other nutrients are unimportant, but because protein plays a unique and irreplaceable role in maintaining the physical structures that allow us to live independently and vigorously. The word protein comes from a Greek root meaning of primary importance, and this etymology captures something essential. Protein is the primary building material for muscle, and muscle is the tissue that allows us to move through the world. It lifts groceries, carries grandchildren, lifts us from chairs, and maintains the balance that prevents falls. Muscle is also a reservoir of amino acids that can be called upon in times of illness or injury, and it is a metabolically active tissue that contributes to the resting metabolic rate we discussed earlier. As the years pass, the body's relationship with protein becomes more demanding. A process called sarcopenia, the gradual loss of muscle mass and strength, begins in middle age and accelerates as we move into our 70s and 80s. This is not an inevitable decline that must be accepted passively. It is a process that can be slowed, and even reversed, with appropriate attention to both nutrition and movement. Protein's value extends beyond its role as a building material. It is also the most satisfying of the macronutrients, meaning that meals rich in protein tend to leave us feeling fuller for longer. This effect is not merely psychological, though the mind certainly plays a role. It is physiological. Protein triggers the release of hormones that signal satiety to the brain, and it slows the emptying of the stomach, prolonging the feeling of fullness. For anyone seeking to manage their weight without constant hunger, this is a powerful advantage. The thermic effect of protein, which we touched on earlier, adds another layer to this advantage. Because processing protein requires more energy than processing either fats or carbohydrates, a diet that includes adequate protein has a mild metabolic benefit. This is not a dramatic effect, but in the context of gradual, sustainable weight management, every small advantage matters. The question that naturally arises is one of quantity. How much protein is enough? Research synthesizing dozens of studies suggests that a target of 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day is a well-supported goal for most people, particularly those interested in maintaining muscle while managing weight. For someone weighing 150 pounds, or about 68 kilograms, this translates to roughly 109 grams of protein daily. This is not an impossibly high number, but it does require attention. A typical breakfast of toast and fruit might provide 10 grams. Adding eggs or yogurt can bring that to 25 or 30. Lunch and dinner, if they center on a portion of chicken, fish, eggs, or tofu, can provide another 50 or 60 grams between them. A snack of nuts or a quality protein shake can close the gap. Consuming more than this amount may offer diminishing returns. The primary goal should be consistency, hitting that daily target more often than not. For healthy individuals, there are very few downsides to this level of protein intake. Concerns about kidney damage, often raised in connection with high-protein diets, apply primarily to those with pre-existing kidney disease. For people with healthy kidneys, the evidence does not support the idea that higher protein intake causes harm. A common question concerns the body's ability to use protein consumed in a single meal. There is a persistent belief that the body can only absorb a limited amount, often cited as 30 grams, at one time. This is a misunderstanding. The body can digest and absorb a very large amount of protein at once, just as it can digest and absorb a large steak. The question is not one of absorption, but of utilization. Muscle protein synthesis, the process by which the body builds new muscle tissue, appears to be triggered for a finite period after protein consumption. After this period, consuming more amino acids does not further stimulate the process, even if they remain in the bloodstream. Does this mean that meal timing is critical? The evidence suggests that total daily intake is the primary driver of muscle maintenance and growth. As long as you reach your daily target, the distribution across meals is a secondary consideration. Eating 2 or 3 protein-containing meals is likely beneficial, but the advantage over a single large meal is relatively small. For those who practice time-restricted eating, such as the popular 16-to-8 schedule, studies have not shown negative effects on lean body mass as long as total protein needs are met. The source of protein also deserves consideration. Animal-based proteins, including meat, fish, eggs, and dairy, are complete proteins, meaning they contain all the amino acids the body cannot produce on its own. They are particularly rich in an amino acid called leucine, which serves as the primary signal for turning on muscle protein synthesis. Plant-based proteins are often lower in leucine and may have lower bioavailability, meaning a smaller percentage is absorbed and used by the body. This does not mean that a plant-based diet cannot support strong, healthy muscles. It simply means that more planning is required. Those following a plant-based diet can ensure adequate leucine intake by using isolated plant protein powders, which concentrate the protein, or by combining complementary protein sources such as rice and pea protein. which together provide a complete amino acid profile. The goal remains the same: to provide the body with the building blocks it needs to maintain the structures that allow independent, vigorous living. Part 3. Movement as medicine for the long years. If protein provides the building blocks, movement provides the signal. The body builds and maintains muscle in response to demand. When muscles are challenged, when they are asked to work against resistance, they receive a message. This tissue is needed. Preserve it. Strengthen it. When the demand is absent, when days are spent primarily in chairs, the body receives a different message. This tissue is expensive to maintain. Let it go. This principle, known in biology as use it or lose it, is nowhere more evident than in the aging muscular system. The decline in muscle mass that accompanies aging is not simply a function of passing years. It is, to a significant degree, a function of declining demand. As people become less active, as they lift and carry and push and pull less frequently, their bodies adapt by shedding the tissue that is no longer being called upon. The good news embedded in this observation is that the process can be reversed. When demand is reintroduced, when muscles are again challenged, the body responds by rebuilding what has been lost. Resistance training is the most direct way to create this demand. The term may conjure images of young people in gyms lifting heavy weights, but resistance training is simply any activity that requires your muscles to work against an opposing force. That force can be provided by free weights or weight machines, certainly, but it can also be provided by resistance bands, by your own body weight, or by the everyday objects you lift and carry. The principle is not about the equipment, but about the effort. The key to effective resistance training is not a specific exercise or a magic number of repetitions. It is the simple act of taking your muscles close to fatigue, whether you use heavier weights for fewer repetitions or lighter weights for more repetitions. As long as you are working the muscle to the point where it becomes difficult to complete another repetition, you are providing the stimulus for growth and preservation. This flexibility is liberating. It allows you to choose the methods that feel most comfortable and sustainable for you, rather than forcing yourself into a rigid template. The benefits of this kind of training extend far beyond the muscles themselves. Strong muscles pull on bones, and this pull stimulates bone remodeling, helping to maintain bone density and reduce the risk of fractures. Strong muscles also support joints, taking pressure off the cartilage and connective tissues that can become sources of pain and limitation. And strong muscles contribute to balance, reducing the likelihood of falls and increasing the confidence with which you move through the world. Cardiovascular exercise, the kind that raises your heart rate and deepens your breathing, plays a different but equally important role. Walking, swimming, cycling, and dancing all improve the efficiency of your heart and lungs, enhance blood flow to every tissue in your body, and improve the body's ability to regulate blood sugar. The direct calorie burn from a 30-minute walk may be modest, but the indirect effects are substantial. One of the most interesting of these indirect effects concerns appetite regulation. There is a common fear that exercise will make you hungrier, causing you to eat back the calories you have just burned. The evidence suggests the opposite. Regular exercisers become better at eating in response to their body's true energy needs, rather than in response to external cues or emotional states. They develop a kind of sensitivity, a clearer connection between hunger and actual energy requirements. This is one of the reasons why people who successfully lose weight and keep it off are overwhelmingly those who maintain a regular exercise habit. There is also a small but real phenomenon known as the afterburn effect. High-intensity exercise can cause a temporary increase in metabolic rate that persists after the workout is finished. The body continues to burn energy at a slightly elevated rate while it restores itself to its pre-exercise state. This effect is real, but its contribution to total energy expenditure is modest. The true value of exercise lies not in this minor post-workout bump, but in its consistency, its impact on muscle mass, and its positive effects on appetite and metabolic health. For those in the later decades of life, the goal of exercise shifts from the pursuit of peak performance to the preservation of function. The question is not how fast can you run or how much can you lift, but can you get up from the floor without using your hands? Can you carry the groceries from the car to the kitchen? Can you maintain your balance on uneven ground? These are the measures that matter, and they are all responsive to the right kind of movement. Part 4. The quiet power of fiber. In the conversation about nutrition, certain nutrients receive most of the attention. Protein is discussed endlessly. Fats are debated with religious fervor. Carbohydrates are alternately praised and condemned. Meanwhile, fiber sits quietly in the background, rarely mentioned, seldom celebrated, yet exerting a profound influence on long-term health. Large-scale studies that follow populations over many years have consistently found a powerful relationship between fiber intake and longevity. For every 10-gram increase in daily fiber, there is approximately a 10% reduction in the risk of dying from any cause during the study period. This association is remarkably consistent across different populations in different countries, and it persists even after accounting for other factors that might explain the relationship. People who eat more fiber live longer, and they live healthier. The mechanisms behind this association are only now becoming clear, and they center largely on the community of microorganisms that lives in your digestive tract. Your gut microbiome, as this community is known, is a vast and complex ecosystem containing trillions of bacteria from hundreds of different species. These bacteria are not passive passengers. They are active participants in your health, influencing everything from digestion to immune function to mood. Fiber, particularly the type known as soluble fiber, is the preferred food for many of these beneficial bacteria. When you eat fiber, you are not just feeding yourself. You are feeding your microbiome. The bacteria ferment the fiber, breaking it down into compounds called short-chain fatty acids. These compounds, particularly one called butyrate, have been shown to reduce inflammation throughout the body and improve the sensitivity of cells to insulin. They are, in effect, messengers that carry the benefits of a high-fiber diet from your gut to every corner of your body. This understanding shifts the way we think about fiber. It is not simply about regularity, though it certainly helps with that. It is about creating an internal environment that supports health at the most fundamental level. The question is not whether you can digest fiber, because you cannot. The question is whether you are providing fuel for the organisms that can. How much fiber is enough? A practical target is 15 grams per 1,000 calories consumed. For someone eating 2,000 calories a day, this would be 30 grams. But the studies showing the greatest benefits often involve intakes of 50 grams or more per day. This is a challenging target for most people, given the prevalence of processed foods that have been stripped of their natural fiber. But it is a worthy goal, and it becomes more achievable with attention and intention. The best way to reach this target is through dietary diversity. Different fibers feed different bacteria, and a diverse microbiome is generally a healthier microbiome. Vegetables of all kinds, particularly the leafy greens and the cruciferous family, including broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Fruits, especially berries, apples, and pears with their skins. Legumes in all their variety. Beans and lentils and chickpeas. Whole grains that have not been refined. Oats and quinoa and barley. Nuts and seeds in moderation. Each of these foods contributes something slightly different, and together they create the conditions for a thriving internal ecosystem. There is an argument sometimes made that fiber is unnecessary because one can poop fine without it. This misses the point entirely. The benefits of fiber extend far beyond the digestive tract, influencing longevity and disease risk in ways that are only now being understood. To ignore fiber is to ignore one of the most powerful tools available for long-term health. Part 5. The psychology of sustainable change. Knowledge of what to do is valuable, but it is not sufficient. Between knowing and doing lies a vast territory shaped by habits, emotions, beliefs, and the subtle architecture of the mind. Understanding this territory is essential for anyone seeking to make lasting changes in their relationship with food and movement. When researchers compare different dietary approaches, they consistently find that no single diet is demonstrably superior for long-term weight loss. When calories and protein are controlled, low-fat diets perform similarly to low-carbohydrate diets. Intermittent fasting produces results comparable to continuous calorie restriction. Vegan diets and omnivorous diets lead to similar outcomes. The differences between diets, when they appear at all, are small and tend to disappear over time. But when researchers group participants by how closely they adhere to their assigned diet, a clear pattern emerges. The more closely a person sticks to their chosen approach, the more weight they lose. This observation leads to a principle that is both simple and profound. The best diet is the one you can stick with. Any weight management strategy requires some form of restriction. It may restrict a particular nutrient, as in low-fat or low-carbohydrate diets. It may restrict the timing of eating, as in intermittent fasting. It may restrict calories directly, as in portion-controlled plans. The task is to choose the form of restriction that feels least restrictive to you personally. For one person, tracking calories and having the flexibility to eat a variety of foods feels manageable. For another, simply not eating during a certain window of time is a simpler mental burden. The goal is not to find the objectively best diet, but to find the subjectively sustainable one. This search for sustainability often requires a shift in identity. People who make lasting changes frequently report that they had to let go of their old self, the person whose habits and preferences led to the situation they wanted to change. They had to construct a new identity, one in which healthy behaviors are not a temporary imposition but a permanent part of who they are. This means accepting that the work of maintenance is never truly finished. Just as a person with a chronic condition must manage it continuously, maintaining a healthy weight and a strong body requires a permanent shift in lifestyle. You cannot return to your old patterns and expect to keep your new results. This acceptance is made easier by understanding the pitfalls of psychological restriction. When foods are labeled as bad or forbidden, they acquire a kind of power. They become objects of desire and sources of guilt. A strict, black and white approach to eating sets up a cycle of deprivation and rebound. If you believe a food is inherently bad, and you eat it, you may feel you have already failed, leading to a kind of disinhibition where you eat as much of the forbidden food as possible. This is like getting a flat tire and then slashing the other three because you have already failed. A healthier perspective recognizes that dosage makes the poison. It is the overall pattern of eating that matters, not any single food. This approach reduces the psychological burden of restriction and allows for a more flexible, sustainable relationship with food. It is not an endorsement of a diet high in processed foods, but a recognition that a rigid, fearful mindset can be as detrimental as poor food choices. The power of belief in this process should not be underestimated. The placebo effect is not just all in your head. It is a biological force that produces real physiological changes. Studies have shown that people who believe they are taking a supplement, even when they are not, can experience significant gains in strength and lean mass. The same principle applies to diet. If you believe a particular way of eating is healthy and effective, it can positively influence your adherence. your satiety, and even your body's physiological response to food. This does not mean the underlying mechanism of the diet is invalid. It means that your belief in it is a powerful contributor to its effectiveness. The initial period of enthusiasm when starting a new approach, often called the honeymoon period, leverages this effect. Part 6. Navigating controversies with clarity. The nutritional landscape is filled with contested territory. Fats are debated. Sweeteners are questioned. Supplements are promoted and dismissed. Navigating this terrain requires a framework for evaluating evidence that is both rigorous and practical. Consider the case of artificial sweeteners. For an individual struggling with excess weight, switching from sugar-sweetened beverages to diet versions can be a profoundly effective tool, often leading to significant and rapid weight loss. The health benefits of this weight loss, including reduced inflammation, improved insulin sensitivity, and lower disease risk, far outweigh any potential minor effects from the sweeteners themselves. Yet the debate continues, fueled by studies with conflicting results. A measured approach to this question requires distinguishing between different types of evidence. Observational studies, which follow large populations over time, have sometimes found associations between artificial sweetener consumption and negative health outcomes. But these studies cannot prove causation. It may be that people who are already on a path toward weight gain and metabolic problems are more likely to turn to diet beverages as a solution. The sweetener is not causing the problem. It is a marker for something else. Randomized controlled trials, in which people are assigned to consume either sweetened beverages or an alternative, provide stronger evidence. Recent analyses that combine the results of many such trials have found that substituting diet beverages for sugar-sweetened ones leads to improvements in body weight, often comparable to or even slightly better than switching to water. This may be because diet beverages provide a more palatable stepping stone away from high-calorie drinks, or because they have a mild appetite-suppressant effect. Not all sweeteners are the same. Aspartame has consistently shown no effect on blood sugar or insulin in controlled studies. The evidence for sucralose and saccharin is more mixed, with some studies suggesting they may affect the gut microbiome. But the clinical significance of these microbiome changes, whether they are good, bad, or neutral, remains unknown. For the average person of healthy weight, consuming moderate amounts of artificial sweeteners is unlikely to be harmful. For someone carrying excess weight, they can be an invaluable tool. The debate over dietary fats follows a similar pattern of nuance. Seed oils, such as canola and soybean oil, have been blamed for the rise in chronic inflammation and obesity. Yet when calories are controlled in controlled trials, and polyunsaturated fats are exchanged for other types of fat, the effect on inflammation is generally neutral or even positive. The most plausible explanation for the negative associations with seed oils is that they are a major source of added calories in the modern diet. The problem is not the oil itself, but the excess energy it provides. When consumed in moderation as part of a balanced diet, these oils are not an inherent health hazard. Saturated fat presents a different picture. The evidence from advanced genetic studies, which allow researchers to examine the effects of lifetime exposure to higher saturated fat intake, suggests that LDL cholesterol is a linear risk factor for heart disease. Limiting saturated fat to about 7 to 10% of total daily calories is a prudent strategy for long-term cardiovascular health. This does not mean eliminating it entirely, but treating it as a nutrient to be managed rather than feared. Supplements occupy a unique place in this landscape. They should be viewed as what their name implies: a supplement to, not a replacement for, a solid foundation of nutrition, exercise, and sleep. A few have robust scientific support. Creatine monohydrate stands out as the most researched and effective supplement for improving performance and body composition. It works by increasing the energy available to muscles during high-intensity activity and by improving recovery between sessions. It also leads to an increase in lean mass, partly by drawing water into muscle cells, which is a normal part of the muscle-building process. The standard effective dose is 5 grams per day, and the only form worth considering is creatine monohydrate, as other forms are either less effective or more expensive. Rhodiola rosea, classified as an adaptogen, has shown promise in early research for reducing both physical and mental fatigue. It may enhance mood and cognition, and some users find it helps smooth out the effects of caffeine or reduce the negative symptoms of caffeine withdrawal. While more high-quality research is needed, it is a safe option for those looking to support energy and mental clarity. Part 7. Bringing it all together. The principles we have explored are not separate prescriptions to be followed in isolation. They are strands of a single cord, each reinforcing the others, together creating a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. Protein provides the building blocks for muscle, but without the signal provided by resistance training, those building blocks may not be fully used. Resistance training creates the demand for muscle, but without adequate protein, the body lacks the materials to respond to that demand. Fiber feeds the microbiome, and a healthy microbiome improves the body's ability to extract and use nutrients from food, including protein. Movement improves appetite regulation, making it easier to maintain the kind of balanced eating that supports all of these processes. This is not a system that requires perfection. It is a system that rewards consistency. A day of inadequate protein is not a disaster. A week without resistance training does not undo years of effort. The body is resilient and forgiving, responsive to the overall pattern rather than any single event. The goal is not to execute every principle perfectly every day, but to create a life in which these principles are the default, the background against which everything else occurs. For those in the later decades of life, this integrated approach offers something beyond the extension of years. It offers the possibility of living those years with greater capacity, greater freedom, and greater ease. The ability to rise from a chair without using your hands, to walk up a flight of stairs without pausing for breath, to carry a grandchild or a bag of groceries without strain. These are not trivial accomplishments. They are the markers of a life lived fully, of a body that has been treated with respect and understanding. The journey is not about quick fixes or dramatic transformations. It is about the quiet, consistent application of principles that have been understood for generations, now illuminated by the light of modern science. It is about making a lasting investment in your future self, not through heroic measures or extreme sacrifice, but through the small choices made day after day, year after year. Conclusion: an invitation to thoughtful stewardship. We return, at the end of this exploration, to the question with which we began. How do we want to inhabit our bodies in the decades ahead? The answer is not found in any single study or any single principle. It is found in the integration of many insights, the weaving together of many strands into a coherent approach to living. The body you inhabit is not a machine to be optimized or a problem to be solved. It is a living system, responsive to care, resilient in the face of challenge, and capable of remarkable adaptation at any age. The changes that come with time are real, but they are not walls that confine us. They are simply new conditions to which we can adapt, new information that can guide our choices. The principles outlined here are not rules to be followed rigidly. They are tools to be used thoughtfully. Protein, movement, fiber, and the psychological understanding that makes change sustainable. These are not ends in themselves. They are means to an end, and that end is a life lived with vitality, independence, and joy. There is no finish line in this work. There is no point at which you can declare yourself done and return to old patterns. But neither is there a point at which it becomes too late to begin. The body responds to care at any age. The muscles strengthen when they are challenged. The microbiome thrives when it is fed. The mind adapts when it is engaged. This is the invitation that lies before you. Not to become someone else, but to become more fully yourself. To tend the body that carries you through the world with the same thoughtful attention you would give to anything you truly value. To make choices not from fear or restriction, but from understanding and care. The years ahead are not simply a decline to be managed. They are an opportunity to be lived, fully and well, in a body that has been treated with the respect it deserves. If there is a single idea to carry forward from all we have explored, it is this. The body you inhabit in your later years is not simply what time has done to you, but what you have asked of it, and what you have given it to work with. The principles we have traced, the quiet power of protein, the signal of movement, the overlooked gift of fiber, the psychological architecture of sustainable change. These are not rules to be followed perfectly. They are invitations to a different kind of relationship with yourself. One based not on fear or restriction, but on understanding and care. The years ahead are not simply a decline to be managed. They are ground to be cultivated, a landscape that will yield exactly what you plant in it. We would be honored to hear what resonated with you. What questions remain? What insights you would add from your own journey? The comments below are a space for thoughtful reflection, and we read each one. If the conversations in this library serve you, we hope you will explore other volumes. Subscribe so you do not miss the next, and continue building the kind of wisdom that only grows richer with time. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.